Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Today, your topic, Michael, the only numbers that matter. What are you talking about?
So, sort of put it into number terms.
Yeah.
The most important numbers for someone that's entering retirement.
Yeah.
In percentage terms, there's three main numbers: 8, 5, and 0.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about there is that for most of our clients, and this is for most of our clients we're talking about here, not everyone who's listing specific situation. However, for most of our clients, what we need to get as a rate of return on average every year, once they've retired, is 8%. What they can draw or take from their investment is or their investments and their superannuation. We're talking about the sum of their retirement savings.
Yep.
Is generally no more than 5%.
Yep.
And the third important number, 0, is the rate of tax that we want to pay.
I knew where you're going with 8 and 5, but I had no idea where you're going with 0. So that's exactly right.
So percentages mean nothing without
making that concrete.
Dollar terms.
Yeah.
So I'll add another number to this. 1.6 million is really where we want our clients to be for a comfortable retirement. And again, like I said, this is all just the averages that we see. Yeah. So,
but I think that will be a good example of when we break that down to dollar terms. A lot of people listening will go, "Yeah, that feels about right to me." And So as you were, how do those percentages relate to a $1.6 million?
So what we want to do is we want $1.6 million as a benchmark from the day that someone retires. The 8% overlay on that is $128,000. So
that's the return that we
want
that
the rate
money
of return,
to achieve on average.
8% on $1.6 million.
Yep.
The first year of your retirement, your return has been $128,000. Let's get this out of the way straight away. This is your money getting up,
getting dressed and going
to work for you.
I knew you'd have to roll it out at some stage.
For new listeners to the podcast, I'm known, and Dallas cringes every time I say the day that you retire is the day that your money has to get up and go.
I'm just waiting for the end of the podcast when you make a comment about Roger Federer's tennis coach. That'll be it for me. The two cliches that you roll out every time. So
given this is a podcast and it's not visual at all, I want the listeners to see that number, that $128,000 number in green. So picture that in green.
Yep.
So you've got $1.6 million of retirement savings. You're getting an 8% rate of return, which is the first important number.
Yep.
If you get that 8% rate of return, you have $128,000 of green. So picture that. I mean, most people picture green as a plus.
Yes.
This is money that your money is making. This is a hard concept for people to understand. Like, I find that it's very, very hard for people to understand that their money is making money.
Yes.
Think of this in terms, people often say to me, that's the interest. Is that the interest on the, and I say, well, it's not, because
it's made
interest
up of
rates,
dividends and capital growth, and it's variable, and there's a lot of other differences.
There's a lot of other things, but if you think of it in terms of interest, if that's the way you want to think about it.
Yeah, just to clarify, anyone from ASIC that's listening, we're not implying that you're going to get a guaranteed 8% rate of return. This is not what we're saying here.
We're
just the concept of, like you say, that's a good point, because for most people, they haven't necessarily watched their super balance over time, and they haven't seen that growth in the same way. So you've got your super, and money kind of goes in, and like a little bit comes out for insurance, and then it sort of goes up at the end of the year, and you don't really know how and why. And it's only when you reach retirement that you kind of go, there's no there's no money going in. The only way that pool of money or that bucket of money is going to grow is by it getting dressed and going to work for you, and it earning a return through the way that it is invested. And so, yeah, most people have seen. It might only, especially at the moment, it's only a very small amount, but you see your bank statement, you see the interest chiming in every month, and it might only be 50 cents at the moment, but you can sort of fathom the concept of, okay, well, there's a pool of money, there's money coming out, and then there's the interest that's adding in on top. Yep. And so, yeah, that's a good analogy there. Like you say, it's incomplete because it's actually made up of, to get that 8% rate of return, you can't have that money in cash or in term deposits. You have to have that invested in the biggest invest companies in Australia and around the world. And because of that, that is going to be variable. You're going to have share price movements going up and down. You're going to have dividends going up and going down over the long term. But the point that you're making there about that 8% is that's the long-term average that you're trying to look for in that return.
That's right. Now that's when we do our modelling or our mud map of how this is going to play out for someone in retirement. We work on an 8% assumed rate of return for a high growth strategy. We've done podcasts recently where we looked at
the last 30 years.
Yeah, the last 30 years.
And then the worst 30
the average
years
returns of the last 30 years, if you want, and the worst returns of the last 30 years. So there's data to suggest that the returns, if you're patient and you can ride out all the ups and downs, and in that we specifically looked at the worst entry point just before the 87 stock market crash. Things fell 45% or thereabouts over a period of time of a week. The global financial crisis involved in that as well, and also the worst exit point, which was coming out at the bottom of the coronavirus lows in 2020. You still averaged above 8% rate of return over those whole periods of time. The average person who panicked, their returns were much lower because they panicked at the wrong time. They went out at the wrong time, and they went out at the wrong time. And what it comes back to is for a high growth strategy, we have actually been able to generate returns above 8%. We work on 8% as an assumption. So we go back to when we run our numbers. That's what we assume. So we assume $1.6 million, high growth strategy on average, if you're patient over all different economic periods of time, roughly, that's conservatively, an 8% rate of return. If you look at historical data as your perspective, and that's all we can look at is historical data.
And now further to that, the other point, I guess, and we'll get to this a bit when we talk about why, to some degree, you notice those numbers, 8%, 5%. You'll notice that, and obviously you'll explain more about why don't we draw out the full, why don't we draw out close to the full amount every year? And there's sort of two reasons for that. And I'm sorry, I'm probably jumping the gun here a bit, but the point is that if you're listening to this and go, well, but what if we don't get an 8% rate of return? What we actually want throughout your retirement is that we don't want to chew into your balance. We actually want your retirement savings to, at the very least, stay stable, and preferably we want them to continue to grow, particularly in those early years of retirement. And that is so that if you do have a period of below, with substandard returns, or if, we have the 30 worst years in investing history coming ahead, we need that margin of safety. And that's why we're never trying to come up with a plan where, okay, well, you spend your last dollar on the day that you pass away peacefully at 90 years old. We always want that margin of safety. We need to know that even if things don't go to plan, are we still very likely to have enough money to retire? And so that's kind of where, just to jump in this, sorry, that 8% that's what we target, that's what we work towards, that's kind of what we work off. But even if as we follow through here, you'll see that the plan is to continue to grow your retirement savings, so that if we don't get that 8% for a period of time, or even over that 30 years, we're still going to be, more where we need to be. We're not going to run out of money too soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's got to, your money has to throw an arc that grows, especially in the early years of your retirement. So 8% rate of return on $1.6 million. Think of this number in green. Like I said, $128,000 is added, is coming in. It's being added to the balance. And what our clients are taking on average is 5% of that amount, which is $80,000. So most of our clients are taking $80,000 out.
Yes.
What we like about that is that a number of things. $80,000 is, and I spoke before about a really important number, which is 0% tax.
Yep.
That $80,000 that is taken out, done correctly, is completely tax free.
Yep.
Which is the equivalent of someone earning
about 110.
Earning about $110,000 a year. So people think of their income while they're working as the gross figure.
Yep.
They don't think of it as the after-tax figure.
Yep.
So people would say, I'm on $110,000 income. Well, no, you're not. You're actually on about an $80,000 income because you pay $30,000 in tax.
Yeah, and so
if you're drawing an $80,000 income and it's tax free, it's equivalent of one person, one member of the couple, earning $110,000
and the other
of before tax dollars.
The other part, so I'm keep jumping in here, probably ahead of where you're going, but the other where that 0% figure applies is also to the 8%. So that $128,000 worth of return, again structured correctly, that's completely tax free. So that's probably the analogy that I'd use there. It's like if you've been working all your life and you're earning $110,000 of gross income, what's happening at the moment is $30,000 is going to the ATO. You're left with $80,000.
Yep.
In retirement, what we actually want is we want you to get a slight pay rise. So we want you to go from $110,000 to $128,000. Then we want none of that money to go to the ATO, and we want you to keep spending your $80,000 so that you're building up that you're basically, again, thinking about that as the green figure is going up slightly and the red figure is staying where it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So people are amazed at that when I show them the difference, and to even take the same figures. Let's say one member of the couple, the year before they retired, earned $128,000 of salary income.
Yeah.
We look at the tax on that, and I don't have my tax scales here, but
they'd be left with about $90,000.
Let's call it Let's call it $38,000 of tax. That leaves them with $90,000 in the hand. I then show them, okay, what if your money earned $128,000 and you retired and it's earned inside your 0% taxed superannuation income stream? Hey, it's $0 in tax. It's a massive difference. So your making money as a replacement of your wage, done structured correctly, is a saving of tens of thousands of dollars in tax dollars.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's pretty well titled, this podcast, I'd say. Normally we come up with titles, and Ali, who does the sound engineering, goes, what are these idiots talking about? He's got to come up with a new title. But I think this one's true, because if you look at it as while we're working, the only real numbers that matter while you're working are money in versus money out. There's some famous quote about, earning, if you earn, it's from hundreds of years ago, so £20 in, £21 out is misery, £20 in, £19 out is bliss. And it really is one of those things where, again, you look at that as a green versus red. If every year, that's one of the first things that you learn when you strike out in the world on your own is, if I spend more than I earn, I'm only going one way. It doesn't matter how much I earn. It doesn't matter how much I spend. It only matters the relationship between those two. If I spend more than I earn, I can only go downhill from here. And at some stage, I'm going to have to pay that back. If I spend less than I earn, my net worth is just going to grow over time. It's just simple. It's like a law of gravity. You cannot get away from it. And so I think people understand that when it comes to work. They go, I've got this job. It pays me this amount. I don't know how much I necessarily want to spend, but I know the limits of what I can spend sustainably, and it's less than what I earn. When it comes to retirement, I think that's probably where the trap is, that people look at that sum of money. They look at 1.6 million and go, that's the money that I've got to spend. And that's, I guess, the point that you're making here today is that $1.6 million is not it's not. That's not the money for you to spend. The return on that money, that 128,000, that 8%, that green figure that's growing by on average over the long term, that's what you've got to spend. You don't want to tip into that capital base of 1.6 million, because if you do, you're leading yourself down a miserable road.
Well, here's the nice thing too, Dallas. So again, let's put colours on these numbers. $1.6 million. It gets an 8% rate of return, assumed rate of return. Green number, $128,000 is added to that $1.6 million. Think of that number as green. On average, our clients take $80,000 a year or thereabouts. They live a fairly comfortable lifestyle on that. Mm-hmm. Think of that number as red, $80,000 coming out. What you have as a difference and what's essentially being reinvested then
it goes back on top of that.
$48,000. $128,000 of green coming in, less $80,000 of red going out and being spent, is $48,000 of money that's effectively being reinvested. So in a normal year, a perfect year, your $1.6 million grows by $48,000 to $1,648,000. What we know over time, and that's the margin that we want. We want a margin of about 3%. Yeah, it's about 3%. Yeah, it's 3%. So you earn an 8% rate of return.
Yeah,
you take 5% as an income. Yeah. You've got a margin of safety there of 3%. Now, that margin's there for a number of reasons. Yeah. Returns are lower for a period of time. Yeah, and that margin's there. We know that when major things break. Yeah. In our retired clients' lives.
Yeah. There's no option to go and work a bit of overtime or to do anything like that. It's going to have to come from somewhere.
It comes from somewhere, and the $80,000 that most of our clients are taking, there's not money left over to do a new roof on the house. There's not money left over to renovate the bathroom or the kitchen or any of those types of things. There's not money left over, God forbid, to buy another car. But all of those types of things. So that safety margin there is a good one for us, because we know that deep down people will usually need to one in every 3 years
dip into that a little bit.
The $80,000 goes up to $100,000 for 1 year, if you know what I mean, because of those things, because of those capital items.
Yeah, and that's I guess the first reason why we want that to be going up every year is just that margin of safety point of view, is just that bit of a buffer. And I'm sure you're going to explain the second reason in that everything is going to get dearer every year throughout your retirement, and fairly substantially over a 20 or a 30 year retirement.
Yeah, and it's really hard to we've spoken before about inflation. It's just the silent killer because a 1.5% inflationary number.
It sounds like something an economist just says, and it doesn't have any bearing on your life.
Well, it doesn't seem to from month to month, year to year, but it's creeping up. Look, it's really only when you look back at what things cost 25 years ago, and you go, I can't remember that was that. Yeah. That was when that was that cheap. Yeah. So compared to what it is now, but things do get more expensive.
So I think, to use your analogy of the red and the green. Now I'm going to try and explain a graph that I have in my mind. This is probably going to go down like a lead balloon, but if you think of it as a bar graph, where every year you've got that bar in red, which is what you're spending. So in your first year, it's $80,000. Now, every year for 30 years, that bar gets slightly higher. The amount that you need to draw out is going up over time with inflation. Now, as you say, it's not really even noticeable month to month or year to year, because it's 80,000 this year, things just squeeze up a little bit. Your health insurance gets that little bit dearer. The rates go up slightly. You might need 81.5 or 82,000 next year, and then the year after it's 84, but if you look at that visually across 20, 30 years, you can see that bar by your last year of retirement is twice as big. It's twice as much money that you will need to draw out of your retirement savings. Now, once you have that visual of that red income, that red bar of income that I need to draw out every year, the only sustainable way that I know that I can do that every year is if the green bar that's overlaying it, the return, that 8% that you're talking about there, if we don't have more green than red in that first year, next year we get into tricky territory where, because if we spend more than we earn, the same as in our working life, if we're spending more than we earn, if we're spending more than what we're receiving in a return, next year we don't have 1.6 million, or we don't have 1.648 million. We've actually got 1.55, or we've got whatever that figure is. Next year the return is lower, and our red bar gets slightly bigger, and it's marching inexorably upwards, and we just need more and more money every year. If we don't have that green bar of your return, if we don't have that growing every year in line with that inflation, you are setting yourself up to run out of money throughout your retirement, and there's just no other way really around that. It's like I said, it's the same as your work income. It's the same as any other financial life. If you are spending more than you are earning, at some stage you have to pay the piper. And you know, we've talked about this before at length. Everyone's situation's a bit different. You might get a fair way through retirement. You might go, you know what, I actually don't mind, because I'm going to chew into that capital base a bit, but I've only, you know, I'm not worried about running that down because I think I'm close enough. But in your first year of retirement, that's the visual, that's a really tangible concept that I want to think about, is those 20, 30 years worth of red bars worth of income that you need. You know, it's not that you need 80,000 that first year, it's that you need millions of dollars worth of income over the next 20, 30 years.
You do. It's staggering the amount of income that you take over. It's millions of dollars through your retirement. You retire with $1.6 million. Yeah. Done correctly, you might draw $2.5 million worth of total income in your retirement,
and be left with $2 million,
and be left still be left with a higher starting a higher balance than you started with.
Yeah.
And that's through nothing else than the 8 and the 5.
Yes.
Like I make 8%.
Yeah.
If I assume and I make that 8% on average every year, and I take no more than 5%.
Yeah.
Then a couple of things happen. One is my superannuation balance grows, and in that simple example, the green number in the first year is $128,000 coming in, 8% on $1.6 million. The red number, what I take, is $80,000. What happens is my superannuation balance starts year 2 at $1,648,000.
Yep.
Now, I still take 5%, but it's 5% of a bigger number.
Yes.
In this case, so I naturally index the income that I'm drawing up to combat inflation, because again, I'm taking 5 from 8. I'm taking 5% from 8%. I'm reinvesting 3%.
Yeah, and that's
you start year 3 of your retirement with almost it's a bit over $1.7 million because you've been able to reinvest.
And we've done whole podcasts about different ways that you can draw that income in retirement, but those are the, you know, it doesn't matter whether you draw that as a flat dollar amount or as a percentage, or whether you dial that up, dial that down. There's a heap of different ways to do that, but I think that your point that you make here is a very solid one, which is that it doesn't matter how you do that. It doesn't matter whether you do it as a percentage or as a flat dollar. The numbers that matter are, what's the return that you're getting? How much income am I making? How much am I earning? And how much am I spending every year? And there's no way that I know about that we can make those numbers work if you're spending more than you earn. You are on track to run out of money at some stage. So I think you're right. Those are the only two numbers that matter, and the magic number of 0%, which is that tax, which is just that means that, to me, it ties into both those figures, because it's 0% tax. It just means that there's that much less money that your money has to make for you, and there's that much less money that you're spending every year on that tax.
And what it really is, that the tax savings, by getting set up correctly, the tax savings actually become almost the amount that you're reinvesting.
Yes.
So if you earn $128,000 of salary income, we said before you pay about $38,000 in tax.
Yes.
Well, if you earn that $128,000 inside your 0% taxed superannuation income stream, then you pay $0 in tax. Now, the $38,000 of tax that you were paying is very, very close to the $48,000 of money you're reinvesting inside your. That's right. You're basically reinvesting. You're making $128,000, not paying any tax. You're taking $80,000 on average, and you're reinvesting $48,000.
Yep.
Well, the year before, when you earned that money as salary income, that was pretty much gone in tax.
Yeah.
That was the reinvesting money was gone in tax. So that's where structuring things is so important, paramount.
Yep.
And that's where we have that plan with everyone. I mean, we're aiming. It's no secret that we get to retirement and we have to rush money into the right environment. We're actually planning for that along the way.
Yes.
And we've got a unique scenario in Australia. You actually get a tax deduction on the way in by putting money into superannuation up to your concessional contribution cap limits, which are now $27,500 per person each financial year, and you get a 0% tax on the way out.
Yeah,
and while you're holding on the earnings, so it's beautiful. It's like it's if you can. And that's our job, is to actually to make sure that we pull all that legislation together, which is just words on paper.
Yeah.
And apply that to our clients' scenarios to get them in that ideal position.
A great example of that, making that concrete or making that an easy visual is you think about those red and those green bars. It's a good visual for this is how hard we need to work your money. This is how much money you will spend in retirement, is that red bar going up and up and up over time. So that's the first thing to be aware of, that it's a thing to be aware of that most people just are not, because it's hard to get your head around how much money you will need to spend in retirement after allowing for 20, 30 years of retirement plus inflation. It's an astronomical figure. The return that you need to get on that money in order to fund that, which is far more than people would expect. That they think that their $1.6 million is the amount that's going to get them there. What they need to realise is the return on that money is what you really need to be drawing your income from. And then that figure, that tax figure, is that if you don't have that structured correctly, that tax is just, like inflation, it's the silent killer. It just eats away that extra return and it goes to the ATO, and then you are going to run out of money. So, I think that's a great way to put it, is those are the numbers that matter.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.